What's going on, guys? Andrew Piluk Hockey here, back for another video. Now today is going to be the start of something I'm going to do before the 2019 NHL Playoffs start, and this is almost going to be like a flashback, and I know that sounds weird. 2010 doesn't seem like that long ago for me, but it's 2019, and it kind of makes me feel a little bit old because I literally remember watching these playoffs, and it was really fun because I was with a lot of my friends from elementary school. I believe I had just graduated elementary school that year. I can't remember, but regardless, I believe I was in elementary school or just graduated elementary school, and this was the peak of all of my buddies and myself watching the NHL playoffs. Like, we used to go to my buddy Carl's house in the basement. We used to play mini sticks. We used to watch the games, and then we'd all go home afterwards. We used to have pizza and stuff like this. This was fun. So I wanted to kind of relive the 2010 NHL playoffs a little bit, because these videos are also going to help people who aren't familiar with past playoff formats, which teams were very good in 2010 and onward, stuff like that. And I'm going to do this every year, but the thing is what I'm going to do now, I'm doing 2010, probably up to 2019 if I get to those videos. And I'm also going to go back and do stuff in the 80s and 90s, which, I was born in 96, so I'd have to do some research and kind of relive some of the stuff via the stats online. But we're going to just do a basic discussion about the 2010 NHL playoffs, who is the best in the Eastern Conference, Western Conference, leading up to the Stanley Cup Final. So hopefully you guys will enjoy this video. And if you're new, make sure to subscribe. Lots of NHL content coming, streams. We've got playoff predictions. We're going to do a lot of draft stuff. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm really happy about how this is going. As you guys can see, there's jerseys behind me. These are some of the teams that made the playoffs. I won't be able to do this for every playoffs because I don't have every NHL team's jersey yet, but it will happen. So let's get to the 2010 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. Let's start with the East. This is the teams that made the playoffs in the East in 2010. The Washington Capitals were the number one seed, the President's Trophy winners with 121 points. So they won the Southeast Division champs, Eastern Conference regular season champions, and of course, like I said, President's Trophy. And the number 2 seed was the New Jersey Devils, the Atlantic Division champions with 103 points. After that was the Buffalo Sabres, the Northeast Division champions with 100 points. Number 4 was the Pittsburgh Penguins with 101 points. The Ottawa Senators were in 5th with 94 points. The Boston Bruins were in 6th with 91 points. The Philadelphia Flyers had 41 wins, so they were at number 7 with 88 points. And the Montreal Canadiens had 88 points, but only 39 wins. So that was the East. The West, the juggernaut. At this point, the West had some killer teams. In the first place slot for the West was the San Jose Sharks, the Pacific Division champions, the Western Conference regular season champions with 113 points. The Chicago Blackhawks were second, and they were the Central Division champions with 112 points. The Vancouver Canucks were the Northwest Division champions with 103 points. The Phoenix Coyotes had 107 points in the 4th spot, and number 5 was the Detroit Red Wings with 102 points. The Los Angeles Kings were in 6th with 101 points. The Nashville Predators were 7th with 100 points, and the Colorado Avalanche were 8th with 95 points. So let's get to the bracket. Now, I'm hopefully going to post this on the screen for you guys to see, but this is how the bracket looked like all the way up to the Stanley Cup Finals and, of course, the winner of the Stanley Cup Finals. Now, a lot of these series were really interesting, but the one that I want to talk about, because we are starting off with the East, was the Washington-Montreal series. And like I said at the beginning of the video, this was when me and my buddies used to love watching these games. We had a buddy who was a Habs fan, but a lot of us loved to cheer for the Capitals in the playoffs because of Alexander Ovechkin, and that's his jersey that I have over there. And, being a Leaf fan, and most of us were Leaf fans, a couple of them were Habs fans, so they were cheering for the Habs, of course, but the Leafs weren't making the playoffs at this point, so we used to pick teams to cheer for in the playoffs, and a lot of us cheered for Washington because we loved Ovi. And if you guys have followed this channel, you guys know I love Alexander Ovechkin, who just hit 50 goals again. I believe that's like his 8th season doing that, which is congrats to Ovi, man. He's going to be killer, probably the best scorer of all time, let's be real. And I mean, hey, he's chasing Gretzky, but at this point, we were definitely cheering for the Capitals. They were the 1 seed versus the 8 seed. Come on, Washington has to win this. But as you can see by the bracket, Washington lost in 7 games to the Habs. The Habs were on a miracle run this year. And I don't want to say miracle as if, oh, they made the playoffs. They were there for a reason, but you'll see when we get to it. But Washington lost in the first round, and people were like, oh my God, Ovi's cursed. Like, this is crazy. But that's how it went. Another team on a mission was the Philadelphia Flyers, who knocked out the New Jersey Devils, who are the number 2 team, 4-1. The 7 seed Philadelphia Flyers, who also went on a miracle run, beat the New Jersey Devils, who were a very good team. Okay, it keeps going here a little bit. Boston Bruins versus the Buffalo Sabres. Boston, again, they were the 6th seed facing a better team in the 3rd seed. The Buffalo Sabres, they win the series 4-2. There was upsets in the East. And then, of course, we had Pittsburgh versus Ottawa. Pittsburgh was probably going to win the series, and they did, 4-2. Moving on to the next round. Actually, we'll go with the West first. We'll go with the West here in the conference quarterfinals. So the West had some juggernauts, and it kind of stayed how you would have figured it would have. So the San Jose Sharks beat the Colorado Avalanche in a series where it was the 1 versus 8, 4-2. So San Jose moved on. The Chicago Blackhawks, who had a very, very good team, were up against Nashville, the 2 versus 7 seed. Again, another 4-2 series win, this time for Chicago. Vancouver, who had a really good team as well. Los Angeles was good, but Vancouver, this was when they had a lot of real good talent there. The Sedins were really, really, really cooking at this point. Luongo looked real good too. 3 versus 6, they won 4-2. Phoenix versus Detroit, Phoenix ended up losing the series to Detroit, who won 4-3. So this was very good. Like this was a good setup for the West. A lot of the good teams were in, and of course that Phoenix-Detroit matchup was kind of you could have went either way because they were basically very close in the standings. Next round, the conference semifinals, the Pittsburgh Penguins against the Montreal Canadiens. Again, you figure Pittsburgh's going to win this one. Montreal again pulls off the upset. Halak was incredible for the Habs in these playoffs, especially against Washington. But Montreal wins the series 4-3. They're off to the conference finals. Boston versus Philadelphia. Again, Philly continues that really good run. They win in 7 games. Both of those series went to 7 games. They move on to the conference finals. Nobody expected Montreal versus Philly. And if you predicted that in 2010, you were a genius. Next, the conference finals for the West. It was San Jose versus Detroit. San Jose took that one 4-1. They beat the crap out of Detroit. Let's be real, 4-1. It wasn't very close. Chicago versus Vancouver, which was a very good series, a good rivalry. Chicago wins. Chicago had a great team, and Vancouver just couldn't get it done. 4-2 series win. To the conference finals, Montreal versus Philly. Philadelphia won the series 4-1. They had their number. Montreal's run was over, and Philadelphia's amazing run continued all the way to the Stanley Cup final. You go to the West, it was all Chicago. 4-0 series win. This is when Chicago just looked like an absolute juggernaut, winning that series 4-0. This was an absolutely amazing run by the Blackhawks, and Niemi was quite good as well. In the Stanley Cup finals, Philadelphia, who went to the Stanley Cup finals, could not get it done against Chicago, although everybody was like, this is a Cinderella story, let's see if they can do it. Chicago was just too strong. A 4-2 series win, and of course we know how that series ended with Patrick Kane scoring. I wouldn't say controversial, but it kind of stunned everybody because nobody knew it was in except for Patrick Kane and a handful of people. That was that shorthanded goal that I think Michael Leighton was in net for at the time for the Philadelphia Flyers. Michael Leighton in the Stanley Cup Finals. No offense to him, but that was just crazy in itself. But oh man, what a run. The Blackhawks, the Stanley Cup champions, the Conn Smythe Trophy went to Jonathan Toews, who had 7 goals, 22 assists for 29 points. Like I said, assist leader, Jonathan Toews, he had 22. But the points leader in the playoffs was Daniel Briere on the Philadelphia Flyers with 30 points. He had a really good run. And Mike Camilleri had 13 goals. Mike Camilleri, Briere, Taves, who's still getting it done, but those are some big names right there. Just a really good Stanley Cup playoffs, a lot of series, like there was some OT games, but I wouldn't say there was a ton. The series against the Sharks and Avalanche had 3 overtime finishes, but not a lot of series that actually had OT decide the series. Like if we go all the way to the Stanley Cup final, there was a couple games. Of course, the Stanley Cup winning goal was scored in overtime by Patrick Kane, but what a Stanley Cup finals. It was very fun to watch. Again, like let me just name out some of the goalies that were in these series. Like I said, Michael Leighton, Brian Boucher, the insane, Yaroslav Halak, Evgeny Nabokov, Tuukka Rask still getting it done, of course, Antti Niemi, Jimmy Howard. Like there was a lot of different names in these playoffs that you wouldn't figure would be there, I guess, and that's completely up to you to decide that, but just some really cool names that brings me back to 2010, and then skaters, Briere, Taves, Kane, Richard Sharp, Giroux, Ville Laino, Michael Camilleri, Sidney Crosby, Johan Franzen. Like there were some pretty decent players, like some pretty good players in these playoffs, but at the end of it, there was some Cinderella stories with the Montreal and Philly story, but in the end, the West was too strong. Chicago got it done. And I hope you enjoyed this video. I thought this would be a lot of fun to go by. And again, this was kind of some personal memories tied in with statistics. But I thought this would be a cool series to do. So if you do, make sure to subscribe. I'd love to have more hockey conversations with you. Join the squad. Let's get to 5,000 subscribers. Thank you guys so much for watching. And I hope to see you when we go to the 2011 NHL Playoffs and recap that. Peace.